My name is Bonnie. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the poetry event coordinator here at Brookline Booksmith. Today, it is my pleasure to host two wonderful poets, Lindsay Turner and Jennifer Nelson, for an evening of poetry. Before I introduce them, I have just a few housekeeping notes. Firstly, copies of Lindsay's book will be available for sale at the back counter over there. Unfortunately, we were not able to get Jennifer's book in, but I have created some cards with QR codes on them. They look like this. They're also available for the taking at the back counter, and it will allow you to order copies directly from the publisher, Ugly Duckling Press. I also encourage you to support these poets' work in whatever way you can, whether that's just following their writing, saying nice things to them here tonight. It really means the world, and just being in this space is huge, so thanks for joining us. Please keep your phones off or on silent for the duration of the reading, and also please know that the event is being live streamed from this iPad right here by the column. Our audience should not be visible to live stream viewers, but if you don't want to be live on YouTube, just don't walk right in front of it and you'll be totally fine. We do have a lot of great poetry events lined up for November, so if you're interested in poetry readings in general, definitely check those out on our website for more information, and feel free to join us. And now for the fun part, introductions. Lindsay Turner is a poet, critic, and French to English translator. Her translations from the French include books by Anne Dufour-Montel, Stéphane Bouquet, Frédéric Neyrat, Richard Reuschman, and several others. Her translation of Bouquet's The Next Loves was longlisted for the National Translation Awards, shortlisted for Best Translated Book Award, and named a New York Times Top 10 Poetry Collection of 2019. Lindsay is the recipient of a WPR Creative Grant from Harvard's Woodbury Poetry Room, and she has twice received French Voices grants for her translation work. She's also the author of 2 books of poems, Songs and Ballads from Prelude Books, and The Upstate, which of course we're here to celebrate tonight, from University of Chicago Press. Her poems and translations have appeared in Harper's, the New York Review of Books, The Atlantic, and elsewhere. Originally from Northeast Tennessee in the Appalachian foothills, she now teaches at Case Western Reserve University and lives in Cleveland. So thank you for coming all the way out to Massachusetts to join us. And of course, Jennifer Nelson is the author of 3 books of poetry: Aim at the Centaur, Stealing Your Wife from Ugly Duckling Press, Civilization Makes Me Lonely from Asata Press, winner of the Sawtooth Prize, and most recently, Harm Eden, also out from Ugly Duckling Press. She's the author as well of Disharmony of the Spheres, the Europe of Holbein's Ambassadors from Penn State University Press. Her work has appeared in Panda's Friend, A Perfect Vacuum, Social Text, The Baffler, The Brooklyn Rail, and elsewhere. She was the Offin Poet at the University of Chicago in 2020, and formerly an assistant professor in the Department of Art History at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She's now an art historian at the University of Delaware and a fellow at the Harvard-Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study. We are so excited to have you both here to read tonight. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Lindsay Turner.
We're celebrating your book. You should bring it home.
I thought we were sitting there, but we're not. We're standing.
Yeah, I think so. I think this part comes first, unfortunately. By the way, I thought I was going to bring up Lindsay's book. That book, it's really good. I think you should all strongly consider purchasing a copy before they're gone. I've known you for a really long time, Lindsay. I've known Lindsay super long, long before we published any books. And so I thought, just to introduce, give a little warm up to her reading tonight, I would just read from all of my books because all of them have been affected by our friendship and your support and accompliceship. So I'm just grateful for your being here and your existence. Huge congratulations. Stop. The only way left to be radical in the United States. Creep like light on a shitty disco ball in a bar's back room. An experimental theater.
Imagine no one passing. In World of Warcraft, my hippogriff beats like maracas. I have arrived in the heart of the Night Elf kingdoms. I enchant weapons as a Zen master's scribe. The Etcher's Meridian. I've come upon Kermalmar teaching my angels to erase the landscape, the top of the pyramid first, then the dry pinion of the witch tree, then the entire pile of antiquities goes white, except one fading trumpet. But I have come for the trumpet of fire. I am ready to sing to the snake. I am John Bautista Tiepolo, and I have cracked an unlined globe onto an inevitable foreground. No peace at the cost of memory. When I saw Kermalmar touching my angels, I became the roaming meridian, destroyer and preserver, the acid and the wax. Anyone in the mood for a villanelle?
Hey.
And if you don't know what a villanelle is, I think you'll figure it out like while I'm reading this. It's a thing. Here too many things stand in relation, and every human thing retreats. Empire is the only form of preservation. Liberals letterpress an invitation to dance to other people's beats. Here too many things stand in relation to allow for any real vacation. Everyone murders, so everyone eats. Empire is the only form of preservation that polices its ritual predation, so the entrails explain the elites. Here too many things stand in relation. Even empire's own obliteration, fantasy, plays the game and cheats. Empire is only the form of preservation. Imagine history without salvation. A form obsessed with loss repeats. Here, too, many things stand in relation. Empire is the only form of preservation. I'm sorry. This next poem is after Audre Lorde's Power, and if you haven't read this poem and are worried you're going to forget to look it up, I encourage you now to take out your phones and look it up. You don't have to pay attention to me. It's like an amazing poem. So, Power by Audre Lorde. Here's my poem after that. The Protest Market. I imagine the advertising in Rome for whatever was sold in the streets was also rhetorically rich and dumb. Anaphori for mass-produced amphorae. We commit to A. We commit to B, C, D, E, as long as the plaque could be seen. I have not been able to touch the plague inside me, but unless I learn to use the difference between signage and poetry, children will inherit my flaw, and their marches will be blind, leading the blind into a ditch in front of the church, a muted palette on linen, underpainted peasant eyes, showing what art has done. Who the fuck is Peter Bruegel? Sure, he's always watching me dance, but he's also caught between his dancing and pleasing the rest who watch the dance. At least when my friend gaslights me about suffering the cruel optimism of striving parents and denies the case of Michael Brown, I understand why he must and can never perish. The collision of realities reveals he is the alabaster 6'2" structure of all imperial oppression, forensic science, evidence, gladly smiling true discomfort at a faculty party where two men of color waltz atop white nods before speaking only to each other. The difference between poetry and signage is being ready to sell yourself instead of victims, then annihilate your buyers. I'll read some things from the book that's on the QR code. This is my last copy. It's not really suitable for sale. It's like been in a pool. I hope to be an unsettler. No land has ever claimed me. No person, no people, no place. I am always standing between burials, and the nearest tree holds all I can know. At the spring, words bubble up and trickle down in banderoles. At first, I had to read them till the grass smelled sweet and the bugs bit home. Getting old means reading them while the hill of my choices grows. At the end of the field, a deer measures the meadow. She is so small today. What words can you possibly wear? What can I bring you? I, so without kin, I have no hands, no apparatus, thus offer my persona as medium, a wager, assuming there's something past myself, or perhaps a way the particular dead with whom I've walked has shaped me in some unlit land. What land? I cannot say it lies beneath the creek, because the creek can never be mine. No creek can ever be mine. I take what I should carry. There is a clicking sound when I stay still, like a gas stove failing. I defined by misfire. I defined by naked love, love without relation. I have piled miswords on your desire. Now I am asking for forgiveness, not the ordinary kind, puckered with regret. I am asking for a kind of eternal endurance, like a child who jumps across a chasm and does not want to jump back. Keep me clicking, please. Skimming while the bubbles break my feet. In the field, the deer finds grass at just her height, but not because she wants to disappear. Something's breathing to make those holes, while the woodpecker strikes a pose. I have to believe the right world follows, and I shout each time it comes, like the sun shouts a highway over open water, hoarse and bright and wrong. Take some water. Disband the police. At the lake, after more protests, I was thinking bits of time could be bosons of light. We have to fight the myth of inevitable nature, especially humans, since now we can fall asleep only with billionaires breathing on the phone, like God, underneath each screen. Small, iridescent murders made regular to look like depth connect us on Earth, while a gray, blue heron shakes its fringe, its light blue shoulder fringe and twitches, its wingtip, its pinion before taking off a skim upon the lake meniscus, and torn against that heron foot, a tracing ripples onto algae. The surface will not bear more weight, recalling the parable walking on water, its silver wrinkles traveling, moire like words, rotated in time. Roman Ducksworth Jr. We could also imagine Benjamin Brown, Bits of Light, James Earl Green. We're bosons of time. Philip Lafayette Gibbs. That suppressed directions of time, Delano Herman Middleton. Drive all light, Henry Ezekiel Smith. But what if we agreed to stop? Samuel Ephesians Hammond Jr. Separating world and sky, Edward Gardner. Power from its bearer, Samuel Shepard. Or the heron, Robert Hall. Life from value, Matthew Johnson, known as Peanut. Thought I'd finish with going all the way back to the first book. We used to hang out more often. I'm going to read the last poem in that book, which comes from a longer set of poems, a quartet called Max Weber's The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, translated by Talcott Parsons. And there's a part that I quote from, obviously, is from that. The Desperate Earth. If any object can be found to which this term, spirit of capitalism, can be applied with any understandable meaning, it can only be an historical individual, i.e., a complex of elements associated in historical reality, which we unite into a conceptual whole from the standpoint of their cultural significance. I had many dreams after finishing the whiskey, and forgot them all once they made me sober. Quiet tower, a small plant from Kesu, blooming straight up and indifferent to Manhattan, where the sun comes from each afternoon. Who, she asked, is a native? And the answer hurt me. A series of embedded dreams embodied in one body after the other. The toy-like breasts of the nude grow from my left ankle, where drapery ends and the bust of a merchant. From my hand ahead, mixing an ancient orator and satyr and highest, rising from my back. A young man, museologically a youth, anointing my nude with Mary Magdalene's can. The merchant's beard in my hair. I am interested in the pornographic loin scrap I wear as Durr's Zogananta, desperate man, one of only a few etchings. Only my clothing in waking life marks my nativity, which is flexible. In Queens, my shapely, sturdy legs draw whistles for themselves. I think Durr's hands must have wanted to etch, to try it, and the pleasure was not sufficiently interesting. So all we have is this series of hangovers, a series of possible persons in a bodily relation. The torment of the desperate man is the possibility of being the nude, the merchant. The politician is satyr, youth. No, the presence of that possibility, the unrelenting presence of possibly someone else as self. Oneself is more than accident of birth. I think of Kesu and the Western Canyons, this country, the United States. A nativity creche of some Wild West would feature only one person. Why not her? What am I wearing anyway? What is she wearing? I love her for trying to wear the earth as all possible habitable planets. Today, I will try to wear the earth as all possible habitable planets. Give it up for Lindsay. Thanks so much.
The big water. I can't follow that. I forgot. If I set up a reading with Jennifer Nelson, I have to follow Jennifer Nelson. I think that you should all go home and just order that book. And all the books. Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, whoever you are, virtually, for being here. Thank you, Bonnie, for setting this up. It's really special to read from this book in Boston. I started writing poetry in Boston. If it had not been for my years in Boston, I would not be here today. It's that part is really special. It's really special to read with Jennifer, someone who I've known for so long and read with before. I was having flashbacks to like that reading in Amsterdam where you did a kind of human mic thing in a bar because nobody could hear anybody. It was really fun. So I'm just really gonna read from this book. I don't have a whole lot to say about it, besides that it is a book about a place and about a time. The place is the upstate of South Carolina. The region, South Carolina has 3 regions. It's got the upstate, the Piedmont, and the Low Country, as Rowie knows. I think they're really beautiful names for regions. I spent about 4 years living in upstate South Carolina, but that's also not too far from where I grew up, which is in Northeast Tennessee, on the other side of the Blue Ridge, on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains. So this is a book about the upstate region of South Carolina. It's about Southern Appalachia more generally. I've described it as a book about what it is to love a place and hate a place at the same time. It's also a book that was written, most of the poems were written between the years of 2016 and 2019. So it's a book that comes out of a moment of collective rage, individual rage, collective grief, individual grief. And I thought this is a strange time to launch a book, but it's good, I think, to be in the company of people and to be reading from a poem, to be reading poems about, I think, a strange combinations of rage and grief that people feel together. So, yeah, just dive right in. The first poem in the book has a line from a poet some of you may have heard of, named Jennifer Nelson. There's a line in here from a talk that you gave that was a beautiful description of poetry, and I'll just say the line is the poem appearing like a crime scene, which I thought was a wonderful image, so that it made its way into this poem. Planning. Once there was an image of a garden projected on a screen. Once there were orderly hedges and white gravel paths. The garden wasn't planned for getting lost in, but that's what people did there. It was just the garden's outlines, but you could still trace the paths. It's not at all like how the straight line of history, now we know, runs out in the depopulated suburbs where the wires run above ground, runs out in strip malls, parking lots of trailers selling pills and armchairs, runs out in a wealth of places of supplies for everything mechanical or animal. Once I couldn't wait a moment longer in Virginia. Once the sun rose red outside a hotel room in the cold New England dawn, I couldn't imagine any other way to sleep I hadn't tried, cocooned inside one form or another. Why doesn't anyone in these poems speak for her own life? Once I wasn't thinking about the running out. Once I wasn't thinking about anyone else's life or mine as such. I imagined my arm extending outside the window in the cold red morning, held there in the cold red like a steeple while the day rushed past. Is this when the poem appears like a crime scene, like a white outline of smoke or breath in a red New England dawn? It's not an allegory in the strictest sense because the made-up part of it is true. Why doesn't anyone here speak for their own life? Once in South Carolina, there was a flood behind the storage units. Once it was believed relief from was a thing in store. In my life, the major errors accumulate behind me as I go. Soon, you will be able to read them like a poem. The Upstate. It always was a little like an outpost here. The sun is big behind the smog. You fill out forms and then you die. It's okay though. The red bush looked like it felt to return to life. The dog came back with ticks on her face. Inside you're being all sorts of people. I cleaned so much and the sky was dark. It wasn't cold, but it was damp enough. Have you forgotten what peripherals are? The trees glowed, but it felt like the end of air. I cleaned so hard we could see the outlines. Then I fell asleep and woke up on the porch. When the leaves blew against the windshield, the volume was turned all the way down. If nothing works out, I guess you could just volunteer somewhere. There were animals with bloodied muzzles. The dog barked at all the cows in Virginia. Whatever kills us will be slow and from the inside. A coffee from the quick trip full of chemicals. The dry leaves on the floor in the hallway scared me, maybe like love as it curled somewhere deep in the chest. The Upstate. This is now the dark underbelly. Dog fights in the mountain county where they found the dog beside the road. The edges turning yellow, strain in the house and over it. How could we and survive, living in the place I left by choice, living season when things are decided? Learned care pushed past care, roadside goldenrod, season of contentment of the beast. Overlook. This is now the anxiety you never chose. In the mountains, mountain ash, find the verb for how you lost. In the mountains, mountain ash, red berries flashed out in dry brush. Find the verb and suffer it with someone else. Find the verb and suffer it. Drove through where the paper mill, suffer the anxiety and the election of the fools. In the air, the paper mill released it all into the air. Sunlight tangled in the air and down the mountain. Has anyone checked up on the air? Did you think you got to choose? Does anyone ever get to choose and still end up together? Drove through mountains in the drought, suffer through the verb together. This is what you didn't choose and what might outlast. Accomplice. Like taking the leash in your teeth, so to speak. Acres on fire, walking the dog through a smudge and breathing it deep. Accomplice, you said, but what does it mean? Is it that I would have chosen it, but I didn't? Reading a rent at the gym, I dig deep and would bury it all like a dog if I could. Forms of displeasure. The hawks are nesting, storms in the evenings. No, the hawks are re-nesting. The forest is gone. They clear-cut the forest. The smell of black plastic, the forms of displeasure are circling the lot. Prescient, bright-winged things, big iridescent bubbles, the forms of displeasure blow over like storms. What you need to understand is it's big things, not people. The bright, formal nothings go rising up the hill. It's things and not people, it's braided with pleasure, phthalates and parabens circling like drones. What goes in the new space? Like, are you the new girl? Like rotted out rope strands, the rope hollow at the core. I have this thing whenever I read from a book, I always feel like I have to read poems that are seasonal, not unseasonal. So I've sort of gone through and picked most of the like fall poems from this book. There are some fall poems and some spring poems, so I'm not reading any of the spring poems. There are a bunch of October poems in here, so that's convenient. The Upstate. Blood stain from the deer fanned out over the highway. Sky every night in a brick red October, over ditches and guardrails, over the front stoop. Whooping and hollering into the evening, what miasma released from pipes into the air. Brush pile on the curb with a pepper plant in it. The water's not clear, so there's red in it too. Red sky in the morning set out to warn you. What would a cent get you if you spent it? What would it take to get at the truth of it? The truth is what everything is when you squint. My first book was called Songs and Ballads, and in it there are many poems in quatrains and four-line stanzas. You can't see it, but this next poem is quatrains, but they're kind of they're spaced out a little bit more. And the last time I read from this book and somebody said, "What were you trying to do with the spaces?" And I realized that I spent a lot of this book trying to get out of the quatrain form because I was tired of writing in it, but I didn't know what else to write. So I guess these poems are like they're kind of like exploded little quatrains. Tennessee quatrains. What would it be like to stay here forever? We went up a mountain and went up a fire tower. The seasons themselves felt annulled like a marriage. It doesn't matter if it was never gone through with. To whom does the texture of a landscape matter? In the hero's landscape, it gutters and shakes. The men put their hands wherever they want to. What kind of things hiding under this rock? Heaven forbid you built by the creek side. What kind of mud understructures the house? In some cultures, it's kept anecdotal. The singer lay down in the forms of her dress. What kind of thing stays away in the mountains? Rain only exists in relation to need. Sometimes the citizens quake in the mountains, a wash and a wash and a wash it away. New City. Just at the moment when it was for sale, I wanted to cast a spell on it. Not because it was so good, but to protect it from becoming what they advertised. Just at the moment of coming soon, poised in the posture of being for sale, silver grass, maiden grass, red ground beneath, pretty blonde planks, and some days for the walls. Welcome the new store, selling you plants, mosquitoes and pipelines, conversational din. At the moment of tipping or not tipping, planted the birds are thousands these days. At the moment of peak growth, unexpected, the phone takes any voice and turns it to pieces. Next spring, 10 more minutes, it's almost done. A pile of bricks and grass growing from sod. Song of accumulation. I was in another state when it happened, long since left out under the sky. I felt the glass grow lighter in my hand. I thought I should pay more attention to what's strange. So long since out under the sky at night, some white streaks and then just nothing. There's an office for change and there's one for savagery. You think pristine, but it just means not yet accumulated. You think pristine, but it just means uncluttered, like a new office where there isn't much junk yet. Or how about we reverse that? Afterward, there'll be less. There was stubble in the field and a throat that rattled, out under the night sky shouting, "I hate men." Then there was less than stubble in the field. When the leaves blew away, it was mostly mud. There was a yard, but there was less than grass in it. When you say less, please explain what you mean. In another state, an office for savagery. An office for change, another for savagery. I was in another state, trying to get things done. There was less than stubble in the field and still something rattled. You think, possibility, please explain exactly what you mean. There's a section in the middle of the book called Spells and Charms. I think often of a really old, kind of dated book of poetry criticism that I read when I was studying for my PhD orals called The Roots of Lyric by someone named Andrew Walsh. I don't think anybody probably reads this book anymore. But according to this book, two kind of essential early functions, or three, let's see, some of the essential early functions of poetry included riddles, spells, charms, things that entertain, things that do work, spells and charms. And so I was thinking, I sort of think of some of these poems in the middle of this book as spells and charms that sort of believe in themselves and sort of don't, which is to say, I was thinking about the power of saying things even when you know they're not going to make any difference, or trying to weave spells around things and people and places even when you know they're not going to make any difference. And it seems, I feel like there's something important about trying, about making these objects out of language anyways. So there's spells. There's spells to protect people and places. And they're written in the knowledge they might not do that, but they try anyways. Charm for J. Ruby, garnet, opal ring. What rescues you could lose its hold. The honeysuckle leaves went dark, pick a birthstone for the past. Emerald, garnet, sapphire. Every mothered creature leaves, that all the care of carrying past, polished up, could hold you there. Pearl or moonstone, peridot, who cares if the thing's a scam? Nothing could be worse than time except the time that came between. Opal, ruby, garnet ring, heavy summer will be past. Say the heavy days are jewels, wear them like they're really jewels. Charm for W. Sea glass, neoprene, a ring around the island. The ocean was up all night and all morning. The red things were rose hips. I had to look it up for you. The sun burns through or not. Golden fleece, bladderwrack, a kind of commitment. The sea by the seawall smelling like death. Sugar kelp, sea silk, sun burn a space for you. Lacy Queen Anne's lace and rockweed on rock. Charm for the neighborhood. Your shipment was delivered in 1,000 tiny boxes filled with air and plastic, but what's the backyard like? Hollyhock past blooming, green ferns with rusty fronds in them. Ant hill, rusty mushroom bulb, a leaf floats down to where it stays. Charm for G. Pearl all night. Yellow violence in the grass. I don't know how you could fight them. Had a thought, lost it. Don't take the debt they offer you, stabbed in the neck at the Regal Inn. In the yellow of the air, blisters from the new used shoes. What should be circling is circling. August, you neurotic hallucination, at the top of the building unrelated, but the sunset only be credible. It's the end of the spells and charms. Tender Publics. Midway, or the midpoint of my life, I understood the need to decompress. There was never enough tenderness in texts. Storms rolled through every day for weeks. I drove through some of them. I drove through many strip malls on the way. It felt familiar. The sign said window tinting or sunless tanning. I drove through and forgot immediately. Along the way were many forms of tyranny. The mist rolled up the mountain as I drove. I rolled the window down and rolled it up again. I said, I can't take you a mile down the road. She ate her oatmeal like a much older woman. She furrowed her brow, but it could no longer be furrowed. Chemicals and plastics make such differences. Closets and cabinets, etc., make such differences. Everybody wants to give me a china set. No one in this life wants a china set. Oh, just set her up in a house. No, you can't even sell it. Oh, I found us a red house by a creek. I found us a white house with a vegetable garden already going strong. Oh, I found us a kitchen of windows. I know I said I didn't want to go outside ever again, no, but I did. There is a proper name in this poem, this next poem, and the person, the character is Isabella, the Isabella from Shakespeare's Measure for Measure. Accomplice. Isabella riding in a car with the boys. Isabella as the music to choose from formed by bruising against it. Isabella whole while whatever weather comes against the windshield. Isabella feeling safe, and would you have to choose Isabella, then exchange it all for doom in the form of the police car, followed me to the hill, turned down it like a watershed. The night hanging in the air like a purple hologram, we see Isabella. Power is a real thing, comes at you like a hologram. They hold it out, metallic and agential, Isabella. Too much to imagine if you want to keep your warm hands warm. Driving to high school and you park in the sky, or into an arms race where you could, Isabella, strike at them when you please. But who would let you, Isabella, steady, full of the pink, full of honeybees? The professor listening to old Italian patriotic hymns, all buzzy on his iPhone. At the end of the workday, winking, sinister, Isabella, there is actually a prohibition against you being true in any of the worlds, a partition sturdy in its gorgeous velvet glory. So this is the part of the reading where people are usually like, I'm only going to read 3 more poems, but don't worry, they're really short. But I'm actually going to read 1 more poem, but it's really long. Sorry. The Capitals. In late June in the Capitals, I slept on different pillowcases, smelling the detergents they use in the Capitals. The question is, what do they do to merit living, I mean afford? It is pleasant, and the roses growing in the front yard patches, a big yew tree, the night birds, the elegant streets. The question is, who does your money come from? The question is, whose loss? The question is, whose loves are torn like wet paper for your money? Whose lines are crossed by it? Who can't live the thing she wants, which is good and reasonable because of your money? The night bird sings away beside a white row house. Your money makes someone want to work all the time. Turn your other cheek on your clean, stripy pillowcase. It smells like detergent, like your door closed to the outside of the capital city. The white roses and the dark green leaves coming up over the red brick wall. It is a garden. It is a cycle of toxic violence. It grows violence or nothing to eat, nothing at all. It is a garden whose real lives are distanced in function of your money. Who among us, after all, has no pillow? In the evenings, they steel themselves up when the sky turns pink. In the evenings, they emerge and laugh as the sky turns pink. The empty stores are ways for your money to make more of it. When could we emerge into the evening just to be there? For example, your money holds multiple people in a space for a while. They could dwell and multiply and need your money. Your money has no border, so it makes one where it goes. Otherwise, you could pay to drink champagne by the border, in a leather booth beneath the big sky turning pink. In late June, it is cold in the capitals, but people flock there for the skies. In late June, it is cold, but people have flocked anyway to make you money. In late June, it is cold, but your money has gathered all the people there to make you more. How is it still light out? whose lives are rubbled, whose rubble, never mind, for your money, whose what is drowned, exhausted, is fished out, is asphyxiated by the air, is slowly finished by the air, is acid in the water, in the food, the money, fishing in your toxic money, breathing in your bed, the money till it suffocates, is separated by your money, is detained for it, is detained by it, and for it is mind, is killed for. In late June, in the capitals, I can confirm, your money is a thing and thriving. The late June evening, and the sky turns pink. Jasmine, the white roses, some purple things I don't know how to name. In the capitals, one day will your money fall silent, ever, and the bird who sings at night will sing in the capitals, your money rising, and the roses, the rubble, the stores, and everything is burning full.
Let's have one more round of applause for Jennifer. And now I'd like to invite them to face the little author table, and we are going to commence a Q&A, so it's our audience's time to shine. If you have questions, just raise your hands, I'll call on you. Let me make sure these mics are on. All right, do we have any questions from our audience? Yeah, go right ahead.
I was curious how you came to choose the poems that you read tonight. You were flipping back and forth, and it sounded like maybe there was some personal connections there.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think it was a bit invisible to most of you. But I feel like their poems I felt supported by you in, but also sometimes inspired by the way that you write about the natural world, both in this book and the last one. So yeah, it was definitely Lindsay time in my head. I'm glad some of that was like brought across to you as well. But yeah.
So glad you read the Villanelle. That's my favorite.
Everyone likes the Villanelle, but it's like the most depressing friggin' poem.
I like depressing poems.
Yeah, yeah, got that.
All right, do we have other questions from our audience? Going once, going twice.
Yes.
Oh yeah, go right ahead.
I'm just curious about your personal history together. You said you've known each other for a long time. How did you meet? What's that been like? If I'm not overstepping.
Did we meet in college?
Did we meet at the Advocate?
I think so.
Yeah, we met at the Harvard Advocate, which is like the art and letters.
Yeah.
I'm not
Poetry and
representing
fiction.
poetry.
Poetry and fiction and art.
Fiction, but there's arts.
There was arts. Yeah. Literary journal. Undergraduate literary journal.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we were both in the MFA program
At NYU.
at NYU. And we lived in the same neighborhood.
And
Right
you
here.
like really helped me deal with that program.
Well, like what?
Well, it's not like polite to complain to the internet, but there are like hard times always, right?
I was trying to navigate living in New York, and I was really bad at it.
Yeah.
And you were very helpful.
Oh, I don't even remember that part because I was terrible at it too. But I do tend to project confidence when none is merited. So
God, no,
that made it happen.
and then we like see each other at conferences and poetry readings. And,
Yeah, but like, I mean, honestly, I just am so inspired by your like triple-pronged practice with like the translating, the academic stuff, you know, like, I mean, it's just really like wild that you're able to do all of that. I have to like run away from poetry in order to write it, and you're just like, I'm all in.
no, but well,
Yeah.
I want to say something nice about Jennifer's work as an art historian, although I'm not qualified to speak to it. But every time I hear you talk about art, it's fascinating, and like I feel like you bring the full, like all of the concerns of your poetry to your work in art history. They just come out in a different form, and it's really good to see that approach to academic work as well, where
I
Right,
have a
like,
question for you related to that, but I also want to like leave time for the audience to ask other questions.
Well, can I ask a question
Yeah,
about that? Maybe
Diana.
it'll piggyback. But I'm curious about how, because both of you are interdisciplinary thinkers and creators, and I feel like some of your work, Jennifer, was kind of, you know, made manifest in some of the poems you resonate. But I wonder how much you find those bleed over, if at all.
Yeah. I'm gonna shoot that one to you.
I wish I were more interdisciplinary than I am. I feel like my teaching and my academic work is squarely grounded in poetry and poetics, and mostly contemporary U.S. poetry. I'm interested in labor, and I think a lot of when I'm writing about poetry as a critic, I'm interested in questions of labor, and that I think spills over into the poetry. As a translator, I tend to translate books from which I learn an incredible amount, and a lot of things that I would otherwise never know. And so, I mean, if anything, I think translating philosophy and social theory helps me understand the world and in a kind of more clear-eyed, hopefully clear-eyed way, and that also spills over into the poems somehow. But yeah, I wish I had like a kind of interdisciplinary body of knowledge.
I'm like scared of what a fart sound would do it to the microphone. So I gotta make one. I already did the blowing thing, so. No, Charlie has a question.
I was wondering, it's two questions. The MFA that you both did, was it creative writing? Okay. And Jennifer, did your, because some of us here have had an interest, it's an honor to, we saw Jennifer give a talk last week at the Radcliffe about her art historical practice. And then we're here with the poetry, and I'm sure loads of people ask you this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I'm just curious about the relationship between language and images for you, and where, that swirl, and how you kind of are in that. So when you're sometimes in your art historical head, does poetry sometimes come out? What's the flipping between the two for you?
This actually connects to the question I had for you, but I'm not gonna make you talk right away. I'll answer first. For me, I don't really think in words or pictures. I think in kind of forms and relations.
Yeah.
And so for me, images and writing actually feel pretty much the same. It's not a popular answer, and I never give it in formal interviews when I'm up for money or a job. But that's the reality of it for me. But the real thing that happens for me is that when I have one of those receptions of a work, I get to try it out in a poem where there's no peer review.
Yeah.
And so it's the farm team, for then I can translate it into something academic. I see how it kind of works, and I explore it in ways that I could never in an article. So in a way, it's the poetry is the forward line, but not all of those. This is the worst metaphor in the world. Not all the soldiers make you kill you right now. Okay, but that's what it feels like. It's it doesn't all work in terms of a logical argument or whatever.
Yeah.
But it helps me go farther.
Yeah.
Does that ever happen to you? With poetry bleeding into and then you're just ooh, now I can teach this way, or now I can.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to say that it does, because I think it probably does, but most of the time I feel like I write poems because I know nothing, and I'm trying to figure out what to say from a position of knowing nothing. I don't feel, I admire poets who are wise and who have wisdom in their poems. I don't feel like I have that in my poetry, and I don't feel like I'm trying for it. But I also think
But
that
there's
maybe
more dialogue with voices in these poems in the last book.
there might be. There might be,
Edging
but
towards some wisdom.
maybe. But if there is, it comes out of just like floundering around for a long time, and not knowing where I am or where I'm going.
Wonderful. We do have time for one more question. Anyone?
I see one in the back.
Oh. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing ghost sweater.
It's really cool.
So am I correct in, I think you said you both did an MFA program? Okay, so I'm in an MFA program at the moment. Can you give some, I guess, what would be your encouragement to someone in an MFA program? Is it worth it? You know, things like that. And I'm like, you know, are we doing the right thing by being in an MFA program?
Do you run one right now?
Just
No,
checking it.
I don't.
Okay,
I
cool.
don't. I
Because
don't.
like that frees me up a little.
Good question.
Go for it.
What? It depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to like ask the individual person more. Do you have like more coverage type of statement?
No, I think it depends. You know, at its best, an MFA program is time when you're supported in your own writing, and a time when you know, you have hopefully financial support and health insurance and fingers crossed, and a community or some combination of these things, and a community around you for writing. I will say I came out of was your first book your MFA book?
Hell no.
Okay, no, mine either.
Yeah.
So I finished the MFA with a manuscript of poems, and I sort of tinkered with it for a year or two, and then I realized that nothing I wrote during my MFA made it into any of my books. And I don't think that meant it was wasted time. It meant that I just needed to, again, get some stuff out of my system and out of the way before I could write the poems in my first book.
Same.
Yeah.
Like hard same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for a long time that felt like a failure. Like I felt like, you know, that was a waste. But I don't think, you know, I think I probably did need to write those poems before I could write the next ones.
I would say the best thing that happened for me is that it forced me to be like a little more serious about being a poet, and I think like taking yourself seriously is usually not recommended in our cultures, but I think it's underrated, and that like, you know, a lot of friendships happened, and that's probably like a lot of reading, and then you read all your friends' books as you get old and stuff. I mean, that shit's like cool. Like, I don't know if the actual process is like necessarily the best part of it.
Thank you both so much. Great answers.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Thank you for coming, everybody.